Welcome to this meeting of Mid-Suffolk District Council Cabinet. I'm Councillor Richard Winch, Deputy Leader of Mid-Suffolk District Council, and I will be chairing this meeting. Before the commencement of the meeting, I'd like to pay tribute to Labour Councillor David Busby, who passed away on Sunday, July the 27th. Dave was the serving councillor for Copdock and Washbrook, a position he has held since first elected in 2003. During this time, he was appointed as Cabinet Member for Assets and Investment, as well as Cabinet Member for Planning, a position that he stepped away from after being diagnosed with his illness. Dave served the Council and his ward with dedication and distinction, and he will be missed by all in this Council chamber. To remember Dave, please can I ask members to stand for a minute's silence. May I remind you of some domestic arrangements. Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use, that you do not interrupt other speakers, that if you are attending the meeting to speak and persistently interrupt the meeting, you may be asked to leave. Please ensure your mobile phones are on silent or switched off. Additionally, we will be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except when there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you're also consenting to being recorded by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcastings and/or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you're intending to do so, please could you inform the committee clerk. Can I move to the agenda, please? Item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Mellon and Councillor Weller.
Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary or other registrable or non-registrable interest by members. Are there any to declare? Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, thank you. I'm a founding director of the John Peel Centre for Creative Arts, so I'll be leaving the room during item 8.
Okay, thank you. Item 3, MCA/25/16, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on July the 8th, 2005. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? Okay, can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Pearson, and a seconder, please. Councillor Davis. Are we going to have an electronic vote for this?
I have to start it.
Okay, we're having an electronic vote for this.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That's 4 votes for. That's unanimous.
Okay. Item 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received, Chair.
Item 5, questions by councillors.
None received, Chair.
Item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or Joint Audit and Standards Committees.
There are no matters referred, Chair.
Forthcoming decisions lists. Are there any comments on this? Okay, the forthcoming decisions list has been noted. Item 8, MCA/25/17 Stowmarket Town Centre Gateway Fund Round 1 Review. And we have officers here, D. O'Rourke, Director of Place, Emily Atack, Director Property Development and Regeneration, and Holly Brett, Head of Property Development, here to help answer any questions, and Councillor Stringer will be leaving. This report contains confidential appendices. If members wish to ask questions on the appendices, the meeting will go into a closed session. I will now introduce the report as Cabinet Member for Housing and Property. I'm pleased to introduce paper MCA/25/17 Stowmarket Town Centre Gateway Fund. This is an update to Cabinet for noting on the proposals coming forward for round 1 of this fund. Specifically, we're also being asked to approve an upper funding limit of 615k towards the John Peel Centre and an upper funding limit of 125k for a community darts venue, including a darts retail area. So the background to this, in July last year, we agreed the creation of a dedicated £1.5 million fund with associated framework to support a thriving Stowmarket High Street and Town Centre. The core aim was to provide further stimulus to attract new uses and occupiers to the town, which create economic and social value. The funding from this is generated from the Gateway 14 Business Park owned by the Council. All bids were evaluated against an approved framework by a cross-service district project team and the stakeholder panel of town representatives. Unsuccessful bidders were also contacted and, where appropriate, encouraged to develop their plans further for any future funding rounds, or else signposted to other potential sources of funding or trusted support. So a very brief summary of the successful bids. The John Peel Centre, the 615k, is to take the current Corn Exchange performance space and expand that from 240 to a 300 capacity. To restore the first floor ballroom and provide lift access, to provide a 100 capacity space for mixed community use, including catering facilities. And then a cafe music bar on the ground floor will provide access to the entire venue from the High Street and Market Square and sort out all the internal access from there to the main John Peel event space. The community darts venue, including a darts retail area, this is in Tavern Street in Stowmarket, this is 125k. The applicants have extensive darts coaching experience, founding the Stowmarket Youth Darts Development League of about 300 players from the locality and wider region. So this will be a community hub offering an inclusive for all sport that benefits all ages, retail for darts which can be tried before purchasing, playing lanes to hire, strong social element, meeting place coaching, training, skills development, bring people to the town from the wider area. It's an on-trend support, as anyone who's watched all the Luke Littler videos will know. Also, just to mention, there is some funding to carry out initial surveys to move the United Reformed Church forward. So I'd like to thank officers for all their work on getting this to the stage that we've got to with about half the fund spent. The fund will stay open in the future, and we may do an additional formal round if we think that's needed. I'd just like to put this fund in the context of other things that are going on. So there's a shop front scheme where we're offering match funding to improve the appearance of the shop fronts in Stowmarket. The £1 million grant we've done to the Food Museum, which leverages £3.9 million from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and the work that's currently being done on sports facilities, what we call the Shelf Project. So I'd like to put forward the recommendations in the papers. And can I have a seconder for this, please? Councillor Pearson. Any questions for members? Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just be interested to know if there were a large number of unsuccessful bids or a small number, or what the number was.
Emily, do you want to take this?
Thank you. So there were probably one or two unsuccessful bids that put forward proposals that really couldn't be taken further. And then there were probably about 8 or 9 other proposals that we are working with those parties in the background to try to bring forward their visions. But they tended to be a kind of a Part B, so more of an occupier without a property. So we need to identify a property in order to help that Part B occupier come forward. But yes, so probably only 1 or 2 disappointed parties, I would say, in terms of not being able to progress their ideas. The majority of the people who came forward, we did, are continuing to support them.
Any other questions for members? Councillor Richardson, do you want to ask anything? Okay. Okay, so we don't need to go into the closed session. I think we go straight to the vote. Sorry? Oh yes, sorry. Is there any debate? Councillor Pearson. Davis, sorry. Yeah.
Thank you. It's not really much of a debate. I just wanted to say how pleased I am that this initiative has finally got some stuff for us to get to grips with and start making a difference in Stowmarket, and also the projects that will still come to fruition as well. It's not really much of a debate. I'm just really pleased that this is happening.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to make any comments? Okay, so I'm just going to read out the recommendations. To note the summary of round 1 proposals coming forward, outputs and evaluation outcomes. 3.2, to improve an upper funding limit of £615,000 towards the John Peel Centre for Creative Arts for the programme phases supported by the Town Stakeholder Panel and District Project Office, as shown in Appendix A, confidential. 3.3, to approve an upper funding limit of £125,000 towards the Community and Youth Darts Project supported by the Town Stakeholder Panel and District Project Office, as shown in Appendix B, confidential. 3.4, if the funding packages at recommendations 3.2 and 3.3 be approved, to delegate authority to the Director of Place to finalise the terms and conditions of the grant funding agreement with the beneficiary, and subject to any suitable controls, monitoring and legal advice for ensuring key objectives and purposes of the grant scheme are secured. I'll now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That's 3 votes for, that's carried.
Yes, let's just get Councillor Stringer back in the room before we plough forward. Thank you, officers, for supporting that with Councillor Stringer might have gone to the County Council. We're just going to wait a minute for Councillor Stringer to reappear. We won't wait too long. Thank you. We're now going to move on to item 8, MCA/25/18, creation of temporary accommodation portfolio. And we have officers here to support us, Emily Atack, Director of Property Development and Regeneration, Deborah Fenton, who's remote but is listening to everything, Director of Housing, and Amarantwi Yoboa, who's Head of Housing Solutions. This report contains confidential appendices, and if members wish to ask questions on the appendices, the meeting will go into closed session. I will now introduce the report as Cabinet Member for Housing and Property. I'm pleased to introduce this paper, MCA/25/18, Setting Up a Temporary Accommodation Portfolio. Now, our Housing Solution function carries out extremely effective work in early intervention and homelessness prevention. And while Amarantwi Yoboa is here, I'd like to acknowledge the excellent work which her team carries out. Local authorities in England owe a homelessness prevention duty, and our performance is very significantly above national averages. Mid-Suffolk discharges 68% of homeless cases at the prevention or relief stage. As well as being a much better outcome for the residents concerned, a preventative approach is much more cost-effective. Temporary accommodation placements are averaging £455 per household per month, so preventing around 50 households going into temporary accommodation saves over £270,000 per year. Unfortunately, despite strong prevention outcomes, temporary accommodation is necessary, though we would all acknowledge it's part of an overall societal system failure. Demand for temporary accommodation in Mid-Suffolk has increased by 97% between 2020 and 2021 and 24-25. In March 25, there were 63 households in temporary accommodation. This report sets out a proposal to increase the provision of temporary housing by up to 30 units across the district and to reduce reliance on bed and breakfast and hotel accommodation for this purpose. So the three sort of key reasons why we're doing this. Number one, to reduce reliance on bed and breakfast accommodation, to ensure that we have better control of the environment in which we're placing individuals and we can ensure a high quality of accommodation. 2, to enhance our local placement capacity, and 3, to improve our move-on pathways. Now, the criteria which is going to be used to assess potential temporary accommodation is laid out in the paper, but it covers location and accessibility, size and suitability, the type of tenure, the property condition and safety, the cost value for money, landlord management standards, various legal and regulatory compliances, safeguarding and support needs, and the impact on the local community. Now, as part of this proposal to create a portfolio of properties, a particular property mentioned in the appendix has been identified, which is currently in the an HRA property. It's currently vacant, and it would be suitable for conversion for supported living for temporary accommodation. This report seeks approval to appropriate the property from the HRA to the general fund at market value. This particular property can be converted into 2 one-bedroom and 2 two-bedroom flats, and the background is described in more detail in Appendix B. Assuming a 4 bed and breakfast placements, there's a cost avoidance per year in the order of £80,000. Just a little bit of background on the finances here. So the council approved in the budget earlier this year £2 million from the Capital Ambition Programme for this temporary accommodation portfolio. In addition, a grant has also been secured through the Local Authority Housing Fund of £951,000. So our expectation for 2025-26 is that we'll stay well within the budget allowance. Further expenditure depends on the budget setting for 26-27, but what we're doing here is setting the framework so that we don't have to go through the cabinet process again when we expand the amount of temporary accommodation. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor, I'll go for Councillor Davis. Any questions from Cabinet members? Okay, any questions from Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do have a question, but it relates to the confidential appendix, so we'll need to go into closed session for that one.
Okay, so let me pause for a moment while I find the bit of paper that tells me how we do that, and it's been passed to me immediately. Exclusion of the public, term which includes the press. To consider whether pursuant to Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public should be excluded from the meeting for the business specified below on the grounds that if the public were present during this item, it is likely that there would be the disclosure to them of exempt information as indicated against the item. The author of the report proposed to be considered in Part 2 of the agenda is satisfied that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for this, please? Do we do this by show of hands? Yeah. Can I have a proposer, please? So, Councillor Stringer as a proposer and Councillor Pearson as the seconder. Are we all okay with this? To go into closed session? Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you. Right, so we're now going to move to debate. Any Cabinet members want to? Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, thank you. Gladly support this paper, and thank you for having a very clear, easy to read paper. That does help. Happy to support this. It will mean that we can hopefully over time make a greater use of the asset that's out there rather than the sort of patchy use that it's had to date, and also get to people and support people when they are at crossroads in their life or approaching crisis, and hopefully avoid some of those crises for people. So happy to support the paper and look forward to seeing the results. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else want to chip in? Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the officers for an excellent report, very comprehensive, and also acknowledge that this is a really large project that's helping in a multitude of practical different ways, and most importantly, it's long-sighted. It's for the long-term benefit for Mid Suffolk, so it's I'm very happy to say yes to this.
Anyone else? Okay, so I'm now going to read out the recommendations. So recommendation 3.1, to approve the creation of a portfolio of temporary accommodation properties within the general fund to serve growing need. 3.2, to approve the appropriation at market value of the property identified in Appendix B from the HRA to the general fund for use as temporary accommodation, subject to consent from the Secretary of State. 3.3, to approve the drawdown of funds within the Capital Ambitions Programme budget to deliver temporary accommodation properties. 3.4, to delegate authority to the Director of Housing and Director of Property Development and Regeneration in consultation with the portfolio holders for housing and property to create a portfolio of properties through acquisition, conversion and development in the general fund for temporary accommodation purposes in accordance with the criteria set out at paragraph 2.3 and Appendix A. 3.5, to delegate authority to the Director of Housing and Director of Property Development and Regeneration in consultation with the portfolio holders for housing and property to negotiate, enter into contracts, including the appointment of contractors and consultants to enable the creation of a portfolio of properties for temporary accommodation purposes. I will now ask the Governance Officer to conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That's 4 votes for. That's unanimous.
Okay. Item 11, MCA/25/19, to confirm the confidential minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of July 2025. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of these minutes? Okay. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Stringer, and a seconder, Councillor Pearson. The Governance Officer will now conduct the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now in progress. Thank you, Chair. That's 4 votes for. That's unanimous. Okay, date and time of the next meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, September the 9th at 9:30 in the Frink Room, and be glad that Councillor Andy Mellon will be back in the chair, and I'm wishing him well. Thank you very much, and the meeting is now closed.